Hello everyone, it's Garden Fever here from northern Utah in the United States, and let's talk orchids today. I've had a lot of requests for information on orchids. I have done a bunch, and I've never really done them because they're very common. However, orchids are a wonderful house plant slash house flower, because really most people grow them for the flowers. We'll go over general care and information about them and some of the mistakes and some of the most common questions regarding orchids, and let's get into it. One of the biggest questions I get from orchids is why it won't rebloom. You go to the store, you buy, or the nursery, and you buy an orchid, and then it blooms once. The flowers stay for a while, a month or so, and then they start to die off, and then it never does it again. This could be caused for several different reasons. One of the most common reasons is lack of light. We grow them inside, and they grow well in low light, but they won't flower in low light, so they still need somewhat bright indirect light. It's meant to be under the canopy, so not direct light, but that is often the case. Another one is the stem that the flowers come off of needs to be cut. There's only one kind of orchid that will rebloom multiple times off the same stem, and that's the moth orchid. I'll put the scientific name down. I'm not going to attempt to say it. I tend to butcher those, so I'll just type it in the captions or annotations. So most of the time when you buy an orchid, the majority of them you need to cut the stem. So wait till the flower dies off, and then down by the base towards where the plant starts to go into the potting mixture, clip it there. If you happen to have a moth orchid, you want to clip it, and here I'll put up an example right here. You want to clip it either a node or two above. I recommend two because it'll oftentimes split off, which is what I did here. It'll split off and start to regrow off that direction. But if it's all the other kinds of orchids, just clip it down right where it starts to go in the soil. And then, if your lighting is good, it's got good potting mixture, and you're taking good care of it, eventually it will reflower. It does take a little bit of time in between each round, if you will, but it will do that. If you're taking good care of your orchid, a lot of times you'll get a spike or a branch off on the actual where the flower comes out. If you leave it, it tends to overgrow. In nature, the stem breaks, it falls down next to it, and that's how it reproduces, or one way it reproduces. So what I would do is cut that off after it flowers. You're going to have to cut off the stem anyway to get it to reflower. So as soon as you do, just try and root it, set it down on, wrap it in some peat moss, or however, we're not doing a video on propagating it, but just wrap it in peat moss, keep it moist until the roots take, and then put it in a pot, and that way you can have two orchids. Okay, orchids, they like temperatures between 60 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is perfect for homes. Most people keep them, keep homes. If you like it on the cool side, 65 to 70. If you like it warm, let's say 70 to 75. So orchids grow really well in homes, and they can be very fun and a good house plant to grow for that reason, which is 16 to 24 degrees Celsius. Okay, with orchids, it's extremely important to have well draining soil. In fact, they don't really like soil. Really bark chips and things like that work better. Its natural environment, it attaches to moist wood and topsoil and moss and stuff, and that's how it sponges up the water and nutrients. It also has air roots, so humidity is good, so to spray it. Although it is a common misconception that they need to have a ton of water. They don't really. About every roughly 15 days you can water it. good sign that you're underwatering it is the leaves will wrinkle and they'll droop. A good sign that you're overwatering it is the roots will start to die. That's a good sign. So you always want to have good drainage when it comes to orchids. Very loose potting mixture, I guess is a better way to say it. It's also not a bad idea, if you're still having trouble getting it to rebloom or struggling with it, it's not a bad idea to have a little bit of airflow. So a ceiling fan or a little fan next to it, or a humidifier is not a bad idea. They do like humidity. They don't like to have their roots, the air roots, sitting in water because that'll tend to overwater it. Also, a good sign that your potting mixture it's absorbed all the nutrients or it isn't very sufficient is the roots. As you can see right here with this example, the roots will start to come out. It literally wants to crawl out of where it's sitting and lay itself somewhere else is basically what's happening. So it's a good idea to add some more potting mixture, maybe remove some and add some more, or transplant it into another pot with brand new potting mixture. And this will alleviate some of that wanting to escape the pot syndrome that you get here. I transplanted this orchid right here, and as you can see in the after picture, it's doing much, much better. So I haven't had a bloom from it yet. I did use some of the old potting mix, but I did add some later, so I'm hoping that'll be enough. If not, I will pull it out, empty it out, and then add some more. So one common mistake that I think a lot of people make when it comes to orchids is they put an ice cube on top of the potting mix to water it. You can get away with that as long as the ice is not touching the roots. You got to understand that ice is not part of its natural environment. It's not meant to be around that kind of cold. It can handle cold waters to a certain degree, and so I think a lot of people get away with it because they set it on the potting mix. It slowly melts into the wood chips and stuff, and they get away with it. If you have a fully healthy orchid and it's full of roots, I think you can easily damage those roots doing it that way. So you want to make sure for the ice not to touch it if you decide to water it. However, how I would do it, this is how I prefer to do it, and I've had great success with this, is I just take the whole pot and I stick it under the sink, and I literally just spray it lightly with the low pressure and just totally drench it, let it drain out, and then go set it back by the windowsill. As far as fertilizer goes, I usually just buy orchid potting mix and just add that to it, or take some away and then add to it, or transplant it into a pot, and that way I don't really have to worry about it much. But for the more scientific expert grower, you're going to want to look for fertilizer that's either 10-10-10 or 20-20-20. This is generally it's a liquid fertilizer. I would recommend a liquid fertilizer because you want it to absorb into the wood chips. This will work for you. As far as pests, mealy bugs and scale bugs tend to be the main culprits to orchids. And they should just be removed by hand. You can always give it a soap bath too, and spray some insecticidal soap. I use neem oil and Dr. Bronner's soap, and that usually works. It can also be susceptible to fungus or bacteria because the wood chips they absorb the water, and sometimes that can cause issues. I would cut away any diseased tissue.